You are being called right now, and the strange thing is that you already know it. You knew it before you could explain it. You knew it before your mind assembled a story around it. There is a pull moving through you that does not behave like ordinary motivation. Motivation is mental. Motivation is selective. Motivation rises and falls with mood, circumstance, and reward. What you are feeling is different. It is quieter than excitement, heavier than curiosity, and more precise than desire. It is activation. There is a frequency moving through consciousness, gathering those who can hold what is coming. And if you are hearing these words, you are not here by accident. Something in you recognized this moment before your thoughts could label it. You didn't decide to be here. You arrived the way a compass needle arrives at north, not by preference but by alignment. Not everyone will feel what you are about to feel. Not everyone is meant to. But you, whether you want this or not, have been moving toward this understanding your entire life. Even in seasons when you thought you were lost, even when your choices looked scattered from the outside, even when you felt like you were failing to fit into the forms that were supposed to make you safe. The calling didn't begin today. Today it is simply becoming harder to ignore. You have heard the term before, 144-0, and the moment you hear it, the mind does what it has always been trained to do. It reaches for hierarchy, exclusivity, spiritual competition, something outside yourself that you must prove worthy of. The mind wants a gate. The mind wants an elite. The mind wants a ranking system that turns mystery into status. But that is precisely the distortion that keeps people trapped. Because this is not about being chosen in the way you were taught. This is not about perfection. It never was. If flawlessness were the requirement, the field would be empty. This is not a trophy for the most polished or the most visibly spiritual. This is not a badge for people who have never made mistakes. The field is not selecting for image. It is selecting for resonance, for stability, for a kind of alignment that does not emerge through performance, but through surrender. The 144-0 are not a mystery in the way people love mysteries. They are not a puzzle meant to distract you. They are a resonance, a specific quality of coherence that can be carried in human form. And you are not just part of that field, you are meant to stabilize it. Let me be clear about what that means, because the mind will try to romanticize it. Stabilizing a frequency is not glamorous. It is not applause. It is not constant spiritual highs. It is responsibility. It is the ability to remain internally coherent when external pressure rises. It is the capacity to hold a truth without needing everyone to agree with you. It is the willingness to choose alignment when it costs you comfort, approval, relationships, or identity. If this is truly landing in you, you will not feel comfort. You will feel alignment. And alignment is not soothing at first. Alignment is clarifying. Alignment makes certain compromises impossible. Alignment removes the fog you used to hide in. That is why it can feel like weight. Sacred, necessary weight. Not because you are being burdened, but because you are being trusted with something real. This is why many who carry this frequency do not announce it. They do not seek validation. They do not build a persona around it. In fact, many of them spent years wishing the responsibility would pass to someone else. Because what they feel is not glory. It is gravity. The kind of gravity that pulls you into integrity and refuses to let you drift back into pretending. You know this gravity. You have felt it in your bones. You have felt the discomfort when you tried to fit into systems that made no sense to your soul. The restlessness in environments other people called sacred but felt hollow to you. The moment you realized that a room could be full of religious language and still be empty of truth. The way your body reacted to manipulation even when your mind tried to explain it away. That was not rebellion. That was discernment. You were being tuned to recognize truth from noise, depth from performance, integrity from manipulation. and that tuning your constant inner recalibration was not punishment. It was preparation, because the ones who stabilize the field must be able to stand alone when necessary. Not in superiority, not in isolation as a lifestyle, but in independence from the crowd's approval. Real leadership begins in isolation. It begins when you stop needing the group to confirm what you already know. It begins when you can be misunderstood without collapsing, when you can be unseen without losing your direction, when you can be wrong without becoming defensive, when you can be corrected without turning it into shame. Let me dismantle another illusion right now. The 144-0 are not here to dominate, control, or judge. They are not spiritual enforcers. They are not the loudest voices. They are not the ones who win arguments online. They are stabilizers, guides, protectors of frequency. Their authority does not come from titles, platforms, followers, or recognition. Their authority comes from intimacy with the field itself, with the intelligence that moves through all things. That is why so many of you went through seasons where everything was stripped away. Relationships, ambitions, distractions, identities you thought defined you, habits you used to numb yourself, plans you used to cling to, not because you were being punished, but because you were being cleared. Your signal was being purified so you could hear the frequency beneath the frequency, so you could feel what is real under the layers of what is popular, performative, and socially rewarded. And here is what changes everything. The kind of leadership the field is calling for does not look like what you were taught. It does not require loud declarations or aggressive certainty. It requires something far rarer: compassion forged in suffering, patience cultivated in delay, wisdom grown in silence. The ones who carry this frequency know what it feels like to be misunderstood, overlooked, dismissed, rejected. They know what it feels like to be early in perception, early in discernment, early in sensing what is coming, and then forced to wait while the world catches up. That experience is not accidental. It is essential. You cannot guide without empathy. You cannot correct without humility. You cannot hold space for someone else's confusion if you have not sat in your own. There is also a purity associated with this frequency, but it is not the kind most people imagine. It is not primarily physical purity, though that may be part of it for some. It is purity of intention, purity of motive, purity of loyalty to truth over comfort. People who resonate at this level are not double-minded. They do not serve what is right when it is convenient and abandon it when it costs something. Their internal compass does not shift based on external pressure. That is why the field can trust them. Not because they are strong in the way strength is sold to you, but because they are surrendered to something larger than survival. Surrendered does not mean passive. It means their deepest loyalty is not to their image, their fear, or their need to be liked. It means they are more afraid of betraying truth than of losing approval. Some of you have resisted this knowing because you see your flaws too clearly. You look at your past and wonder how you could possibly be part of something this significant. You remember choices you regret, patterns you outgrew, seasons where you were not your best self. And the mind says someone like me cannot belong to something like this. Let me free you from that spiral. The intelligence moving through you already knows your weaknesses. It chose you with full awareness of your history, your fear, your limitations. What qualified you was never your record. It was your response. When life corrected you, you listened. When it broke you open, you did not close. When it asked you to let go, you obeyed even while grieving what was leaving. When your ego tried to claim power, something deeper humbled you. When you were tempted to trade integrity for comfort, something in you refused. That willingness, your openness to being reshaped, marks you far more than your mistakes ever could. The field does not require a spotless past. It requires a vessel that can be refined without becoming bitter. And refinement is rarely gentle. The 144-0 are unified in spirit even if they never meet in form. They recognize truth when it moves through them. They feel disturbance when deception rises. They are spiritually alert in ways that can exhaust them because they cannot unsee what they see. They notice subtle shifts before they become obvious. They sense fractures in people's words, not to judge them, but to perceive where integrity is missing. They feel heaviness without explanation. They feel urgency without clear reason. This is not necessarily anxiety. This is your nervous system responding to changes in the field. This is spiritual awareness developing in real time. And yes, it is uncomfortable because you are moving into a bandwidth most people are not yet accessing. When you become sensitive to coherence, incoherence becomes loud. When you become sensitive to truth, performance becomes obvious. When you become sensitive to alignment, compromise feels like physical discomfort. Here's what you must understand with absolute clarity. Not everyone who claims this frequency actually carries it, and not everyone who carries it knows they do. The field reveals identity in stages. First, it forms character. Then it reveals calling. If calling comes before character, ego destroys the vessel. Pride consumes the assignment. That is why so many of you were kept hidden, delayed, uncomfortable. You were not being withheld from your purpose. You were being protected until you could hold it without it distorting you. Delay is often protection. Silence is often training. Isolation is often refinement. And if you have lived through long seasons where you could not break through no matter how hard you tried, consider that the field may have been building containment in you. The ability to hold power without dramatizing it. The ability to carry clarity without turning it into superiority. The ability to lead without needing to be seen. This is the difference between spiritual ambition and spiritual maturity. Ambition wants significance. Maturity wants alignment. Ambition wants to be special. Maturity wants to be useful. Ambition demands immediate visibility. Maturity can wait because it trusts timing. And timing is not just a concept, it is a structural intelligence. Things arrive when the vessel is ready to hold them without distortion. If this is resonating deeply, not as a concept but as recognition, it is because you are not discovering something new. You are remembering something eternal. The confusion you once felt is being replaced by clarity. The fear is being replaced by peace. And the calling that once felt overwhelming is beginning to feel familiar, like coming home to a part of yourself you forgot existed. Not a fantasy version of yourself, not a heroic identity, a simple, quiet self that knows how to stand in truth without needing to shout. This is who the 144-0 truly are. Not a mystery to chase, not a title to earn, but a responsibility to carry with humility, discipline, and unwavering alignment. And as you go deeper, you begin to understand why you were not just included in this frequency, but prepared to anchor it for others. Let me go further because your system needs to hear this at a cellular level. The ones who carry this frequency are not driven by scarcity. They are not driven by fear of missing out. They are not driven by the need to prove themselves worthy. They are moved by responsibility, by a pull that precedes thought. When the field speaks, something in them responds before logic has time to interfere. That is not emotion. That is recognition at the level of essence. Spirit calling to spirit. Frequency aligning with frequency. You have wondered why you could never settle into shallow versions of truth. Why surface-level teachings left you starving. Why entertainment disguised as spirituality never satisfied the hunger in you. That hunger was not dissatisfaction with life. It was preparation for depth. The field was training your discernment to recognize weight-substance resonance. The 144-0 are not entertained by noise. They are nourished by truth. And real truth does not perform. It settles. It lands. It holds. It strengthens you without making you addicted to it. It does not require you to become a different person. It calls you into a more honest version of the person you already are. You were also taught restraint in ways that felt like punishment but were actually precision training. You learned when to speak and when silence was the wiser choice. When to act and when waiting would reveal more. When to resist and when to surrender. This balance did not come naturally. It was forged through mistakes, through correction, through the kind of patience that only develops when you have no choice but to trust timing you cannot see. The field was teaching you how to carry authority without aggression, confidence, without arrogance, power without domination. Those distinctions matter more than you realize, because many people want power. Few people can hold it without distortion. Many people want influence. Few people can carry influence without using it to feed identity. The field is not looking for performers. It is looking for stabilizers. People whose internal state does not collapse under pressure. People whose yes means yes and whose no does not waver when tested. People who will not compromise truth for applause. People who will not panic when systems fail. People who will not become cruel when they become responsible. This is why the world may never applaud you for what you carry. Heaven does not measure influence by visibility. Reality does not respond to attention in the way humans do. Reality responds to alignment. Angels respond to alignment, not applause. The field trusts coherence, not charisma. And if you feel the impulse to prove this calling, pause. That impulse is not the field. That is the mind trying to turn resonance into identity. The calling does not need your performance. It needs your stability. It needs you to stop pretending you do not feel the pull. It needs you to respond with integrity in the ordinary places where your life actually happens. Your conversations, your decisions, your boundaries, your willingness to choose truth when no one is watching. This is not a dramatic spiritual role. It is a daily posture. You are being called right now, and you already know it. Not as a thought, as a recognition in your body. As a quiet, yes, that doesn't need a speech. You don't have to announce it to anyone. You don't have to compete for it. You don't have to convince yourself. You simply have to align. And if you can feel that alignment beginning, if these words are landing not as entertainment but as a signal, then let it settle. Let it move through you not as hope but as recognition. The field doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be coherent. It needs you to be honest. It needs you to be available. Because what is coming will not be held by people who are chasing identity. It will be held by people who can stand still inside themselves, steady, surrendered, and clear when the world around them becomes loud. The field entrusts power to those who will not misuse it, who will not weaponize it, who will not hoard it. Power in the hands of an unstable vessel becomes pressure that leaks into control. Influence in the hands of an unrefined heart becomes manipulation. Visibility in the hands of unresolved identity becomes performance. The field is not careless with what it releases. It is precise, almost relentless, in where it places weight. That is why your journey looked slower, heavier, lonelier than what you watched others experience. That is why your path didn't resemble the neat linear arcs you were taught to expect. You are not delayed. You are being refined at a depth that could not be rushed. So breathe into that. Let your shoulders drop. You were never behind. You were being prepared for something that required this exact path. You were not selected to lead by chance, by lottery, by random assignment. There has been a frequency moving through your field long before you had language for it. Long before you understood what was happening to you, before you trusted your own knowing, that signal has been shaping every season of your life, including the ones that felt like failure, detour, collapse. You noticed it early, even if you couldn't name it. You felt different, not superior. Different. You sensed undercurrents others ignored. You questioned narratives other people accepted without hesitation. You felt deeply, sometimes too deeply, and that depth felt like a burden because you did not yet understand it was a gift. You were sensitive to injustice, to dishonesty, to spiritual emptiness in ways that exhausted you. You would walk into a room and feel what was unspoken. You would hear a message and sense what was missing. You would watch people celebrate a truth that felt thin, and your body would tighten without explanation. That was not weakness. That was awareness. The field was shaping the lens through which you would perceive reality, the filter through which you would discern truth from illusion, integrity from performance. And when that lens begins forming early, life often feels confusing, because you start seeing contradictions that others can live inside without discomfort. You start noticing where words and actions don't match. You start feeling the cost of compromise long before the consequences become visible. That sensitivity can feel like a curse until you realize it is the very thing that allows you to guide without being deceived by appearances. Leadership did not arrive through celebration. It arrived through pressure. While others were being affirmed, you were being tested. While others were being comforted, you were being corrected. While others were being told they were ready, you were being placed in circumstances that exposed exactly where you still weren't. And you walked through seasons where nothing made sense, where every step felt like walking through fog. You did the right thing, and it did not get rewarded. You stayed honest, and it didn't protect you. You chose restraint, and nothing accelerated. You obeyed the quiet instruction, and still felt unseen. And yet something inside you refused to quit. That persistence was not stubbornness. It was the frequency holding you even when you could not feel it. The field was teaching you how to stand when reassurance was absent, how to move when clarity was incomplete, how to keep your center when the world offered you no confirmation that your path was real. This is an underestimated form of training. Most people can move when they can see the whole staircase. Most people can be courageous when they have a crowd behind them. Most people can speak truth when it is rewarded. But leaders, real leaders, must be able to move with partial light. They must be able to take the next step without demanding the whole map. They must be able to stay aligned even when alignment costs them the very things the ego uses as proof, approval, praise, belonging. You are prepared to lead because you know intimately what it feels like to be misunderstood, to be judged without being known, to give everything and still be overlooked. That experience carved humility into your being. It stripped you of the desire to dominate or control, because you know what it feels like to be dominated, to be controlled. It taught you empathy, and empathy is one of the most powerful tools a leader can carry. Without it, authority becomes tyranny. With it, authority becomes healing. Many of you did not grow up supported in the ways that mattered. Some of you carried responsibilities far too early. Others learned independence not by choice, but by necessity. The field allowed that not because it abandoned you, but because it was training you. Leaders must be able to carry weight without collapsing under it. They must know how to function when support is minimal, when answers are delayed, when reassurance is nowhere to be found. And you learn that not theoretically but experientially. Now let me speak directly to the doubt that still moves through you. You ask yourself if you are really equipped for this. You compare your internal struggles with the outward confidence of others and wonder if your uncertainty disqualifies you. You think that because you still feel fear sometimes, because you still wrestle with questions, because you still have moments where your nervous system shakes, you must not be the kind of person the field would trust. Hear this with absolute clarity. The field does not choose leaders because they are flawless. It chooses them because they are teachable, because they are willing to be corrected, refined, reshaped without hardening, without closing, without becoming bitter. Your willingness to stay open even when it hurt. There were moments when you wanted to quit. Moments when you questioned why the path felt so hard, why silence lasted so long, why obedience seemed unrewarded. But you stayed, even when you were tired, even when you were confused, even when your faith felt like a thread about to snap. That consistency marked you. Leadership begins with endurance. Anyone can start. Few remain faithful through delay. Delay reveals what a person is really serving. If you are serving recognition, delay will break you. If you are serving comfort, delay will embitter you. If you are serving identity, delay will humiliate you until you abandon the path. But if you are serving truth, delay becomes a forge. It burns off what is not essential and leaves what is. You are also prepared because you are not easily intoxicated by power. Praise does not blind you. Titles do not define you. You crave peace more than recognition, and that is rare. The field cannot entrust influence to those addicted to validation, those who need applause to feel alive, those who need to be seen to believe they exist. It gives authority to those who know how to return it, without resentment, without pride, without attachment. Look at your life honestly. You were never able to live recklessly for long. Conviction always found you. Even when you tried to ignore it, even when you tried to numb it, that inner correction did not leave. That was not condemnation. It was guidance. The field was sharpening your internal compass, because leaders must be able to discern quickly, clearly, without needing consensus to confirm what they already know. You were chosen to lead because you have walked through internal battles that forced you to know yourself, not the version you present to the world, but the version that emerges in solitude, in pain, in fear. You confronted your shadows. You faced your wounds. You learned where you were strong and where you were fragile. That self-awareness is not common, and it is essential. Leaders who do not know themselves end up projecting their unhealed pain onto everyone around them. They turn correction into attack. They turn disagreement into betrayal. They turn responsibility into a stage where they reenact their unresolved story. The field protected you from becoming that by taking you inward first, by forcing you to face what you would later be tempted to export. Some of you were isolated not because you were rejected, but because the field was protecting you from premature influence. It did not want your voice shaped by noise, by trends, by what was popular. It wanted your voice shaped by truth. Solitude refined your thinking. Silence strengthened your discernment. Loneliness pushed you into deeper dependence on something larger than your own understanding. And now that foundation is unshakable. You were also selected because you carry a calming authority that you may not even notice in yourself. When you speak truth, it settles chaos. When you walk into confusion, clarity follows. You do not have to force it. You do not have to perform it. People feel safer around you, and they cannot always explain why. That is not personality. That is presence. That is the field resting on those who have made internal space for it. Leadership is not about commanding crowds. It is about carrying responsibility without complaint. It is about making decisions rooted in wisdom, not impulse, not reaction, not fear. The field watched how you handled disappointment. It observed how you responded when things did not go your way, when doors closed, when people left, when timing felt cruel. You did not become bitter. You became deeper. That maturity qualified you. And let me address something gently, because some of you need to hear this. Some of you tried to avoid this calling. You wanted a quiet life, a simple path, something that did not require this much of you. You asked the field to choose someone else, someone stronger, someone more capable. That reluctance did not disqualify you. It confirmed you. Those who crave leadership often seek power for its own sake. Those who hesitate often understand the weight of responsibility. The field trusts those who do not rush toward control, who do not grasp at authority, who do not need to be seen. You were chosen because you know how to listen not just to words, but to what moves beneath them. You pause. You reflect. You discern. You do not react impulsively. You do not speak just to fill silence. That patience will guide many who are overwhelmed by speed, urgency, and the addiction to constant motion. In a world that has lost the ability to be still, your steadiness will be medicine. There is also resilience in you, forged through repeated disappointment, through collapse and rebuilding, through learning how to start again without losing faith in what is possible. That resilience becomes a foundation for others who feel broken, who believe they are too damaged to be useful, who think their past disqualifies them. You will show them not through slogans, not through performance, but through presence that transformation is real. Leadership is already in you. It has been expressing itself in small ways long before it becomes visible in larger ones. How you care when no one is watching, how you speak when it would be easier to stay silent, how you endure when quitting would make more sense, how you forgive when resentment would feel justified. These are not random qualities. They are evidence of preparation. The field did not mark you because you asked for it. It marked you because it could trust you with it. And the calling to lead is not a burden meant to crush you. It is an assignment meant to mature you, to bring you into the fullness of what you already are, but have been too afraid to embody. As you step into it, you will not become someone new. You will finally become who you always were, beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear, beneath the doubt. So breathe into that. Let the pressure lift. You are not chosen because you are perfect. You are chosen because you are aligned. And alignment is what the field responds to. Now this is the part that has tested you most deeply, not the battles, not the losses, not even the loneliness, but the waiting. The silent, unmoving, unanswered waiting. Many of you have quietly wondered if something went wrong, if you missed a signal, if you delayed your own activation through some invisible failure. Let me be clear. The waiting is not a mistake. It is not denial. It is not disobedience. It is design. The field does not move those it is preparing in chaos. It moves them in order. And order begins in stillness, in the kind of silence that reveals what noise obscures. Many of you expected the call to leadership to feel dramatic, sudden, unmistakable. But the field does not always call that way. Sometimes it calls through the slow tightening of conscience. Sometimes it calls through the repeated refusal of your soul to accept what is false. Sometimes it calls through the quiet closing of doors that would have made your life easier but your spirit smaller. The reason you are not moving yet in the way you expected is because movement without alignment creates destruction. Field is not interested in speed. It is interested in precision. Precision takes time. It takes layers of recalibration that cannot be rushed. Silence is not absence. Silence is instruction without interference. In silence, motives are exposed. In silence, the ego has fewer mirrors. In silence, your identity is forced to loosen because there is nothing to perform for. In silence, you learn the difference between desire and direction. You learn what you want because it would make you feel safe, and what you are called to because it is true. That is why the field uses silence, not to starve you, but to refine you. And if you can let this settle, you will see what your life has been telling you. The entire time, the slow path was not the wrong path. The heavy path was not punishment. The lonely path was not abandonment. It was refinement. It was containment. It was the field making sure that when power arrives, it does not corrupt you. When authority arrives, it does not inflate you. When responsibility arrives, it does not break you. Because the field entrusts power to those who will not misuse it, and you are still here. That by itself is evidence. You thought there would be a loud confirmation, instant clarity, immediate momentum, some unmistakable sign that the next phase had begun. You expected the call to arrive like a door slamming open, like a voice announcing your name, like life suddenly accelerating in a way you could not deny. But the field chose silence instead, because silence reveals what noise hides. Silence exposes impatience. It exposes insecurity. It exposes the subtle dependence on external validation that can live quietly inside even the most sincere devotion. And until those patterns are healed, movement would be premature. It would fracture you under the very pressure you are being prepared to hold. That is why the waiting has been so exacting. Not because you are being punished and not because you have failed to do enough. Waiting is a diagnostic environment. It shows you what still reaches for proof. It shows you what still bargains for reassurance. It shows you where the nervous system still panics when clarity is absent. Silence brings all of that to the surface, not to shame you, but to reveal what must be stabilized before your life can carry the weight of what is coming. The 144-0 are waiting because they're being synchronized. The field does not activate individuals in isolation without considering the whole. This calling is collective, even though the preparation feels intensely personal. Each one is being refined at a different pace, in a different environment, through different pressures. One is being refined through loss, another through delay, another through responsibility, another through obscurity, another through the slow erosion of old identities. And yet the alignment happens simultaneously, like an orchestra tuning to the same frequency before the music begins. The field moves like a symphony, not a solo performance. This is why it can feel unfair when you look around. You see others advancing, building, announcing, celebrating, and you are still here, still waiting, still wondering when your turn will come. You feel like you are standing still while the world rushes past you. But that waiting is not stagnation. It is containment. Containment is not confinement. It is the strengthening of your foundation so that when movement comes, and it will, you do not fracture under pressure. You do not collapse when resistance rises. You do not abandon alignment the moment it becomes inconvenient. Containment is what allows the vessel to hold power without leaking it into control influence, without turning it into performance responsibility, without turning it into resentment. Let me address the frustration you do not say out loud. You have done the work. You have prayed. You have meditated. You have aligned. You have changed. You have cleaned your patterns, softened your reactions, refined your motives. And yet your external life still feels paused, suspended, as if nothing is happening. That can create a quiet anger. Hear this carefully. The field does not reward obedience with immediate results. It rewards it with trust, and trust comes before responsibility. The field is learning whether it can trust you when nothing is changing, when no one is watching, when there is no evidence that any of this matters. Can you remain aligned without reward? Can you remain faithful without applause? Can you keep choosing integrity when your life offers you no immediate proof that integrity works? This is where most people break, because most people are not actually serving truth. They are serving an outcome. They are serving relief. They are serving a story in which the universe proves they were right to believe. Waiting burns that out. The 144-0 are not moving yet because they are being taught restraint. Anyone can act. Few can wait. Waiting trains discernment. It teaches you to move when the field moves, not when emotion pushes you, not when fear pressures you, not when comparison tempts you. Leaders who move too early end up spending years correcting damage that could have been avoided with patience. The field is saving you from that burden. And you need to understand this at a deeper level. Waiting is not inactivity. It is internal motion. While it looks quiet on the outside, deep restructuring is happening within you. Your priorities are shifting. Your desires are becoming simpler. Your tolerance for confusion is increasing, even if you still dislike it. Your discernment is sharpening. Your appetite for noise is decreasing. Your body is learning how to regulate. Your nervous system is learning how to stay present without collapsing into urgency. These changes can be subtle, almost invisible, but they are essential. You are being rewired at a level most people will never access because most people cannot stay in silence long enough to be rewired by it. They escape. They distract. They manufacture movement so they do not have to feel the discomfort of not knowing. You are being weaned off dependency right now. Dependency on people. Dependency on systems. Dependency on external affirmation. Dependency on a mentor, a method, a community, a structure that tells you who you are. The field is teaching you how to stand without leaning on anything outside yourself. Because when leadership begins, others will lean on you. And if you are still dependent, the weight will overwhelm you. You will collapse under the very thing you are meant to stabilize. This is not theoretical. This is functional. The field is also watching how you handle uncertainty. Will you panic when clarity is absent? Will you compare yourself to those who appear further along? Will you compromise your alignment just to feel like you are making progress? Or will you trust the process even when it makes no logical sense? Waiting reveals faith in its purest form, faith without evidence, without applause, without reassurance. That kind of faith is powerful. That kind of faith moves mountains, not because it is dramatic, but because it is steady. Some of you feel like your life is on hold, plans delayed, opportunities stalled, relationships stagnant. That pause is intentional. The field is limiting distraction so you can hear clearly, so you can discern without interference. When too many doors are open, discernment becomes difficult. Options multiply and urgency increases, and the nervous system starts making choices from fear. The field closes doors, not to punish you, but to focus your energy, to direct your attention toward what actually matters. It is also doing something else. It is revealing what you chase when you feel incomplete. When movement is limited, your coping strategies become obvious. You notice how quickly the mind searches for a substitute, something to fix something, to optimize something, to prove. You notice how quickly the ego reaches for a narrative. I must be failing. I must be forgotten. I must have missed my chance. Waiting exposes those reflexes. And what is exposed can be healed. Let me say something that may surprise you. If the field moved you earlier, it would have cost you more than it would have blessed you. You would have carried responsibility without rest, influence, without wisdom, authority, without peace. You would have built something that looked impressive but required constant effort to maintain. You would have created momentum that was powered by anxiety instead of alignment. The field is protecting your nervous system, your emotional health, your spiritual clarity. It knows what you can handle better than you do. It knows the difference between what you can carry for a month and what you can carry for a decade. Waiting also reveals what still needs healing. Old wounds surface. Old fears speak louder. Old patterns try to return. This is not regression. This is exposure. The field is allowing unresolved areas to rise so they can be addressed before leadership begins, because leaders cannot afford unhealed wounds. They bleed onto everyone they touch. They distort guidance into control. They mistake being challenged for being attacked. They use responsibility to compensate for insecurity. The field will not hand you influence until your inner world is stable enough to hold it without contaminating it. That is why silence feels intense. Silence does not just remove noise, it removes your usual ways of avoiding what is unresolved. And the silence you feel is not the field ignoring you. It is the field trusting you, trusting that you will not walk away when it does not explain itself, trusting that you will not create your own movement out of impatience, trusting that you will remain faithful even when direction feels unclear, even when the path ahead is invisible. The 144-0 are also waiting because unity requires maturity. The field is aligning hearts, not just assignments. Division delays activation. Ego disrupts flow. Pride creates rivalry. Comparison creates distortion. The field is cleansing competition from those it is preparing. It is teaching them to recognize each other without jealousy, without the need to be first, best, most visible. Because a collective field cannot stabilize when its members are secretly competing for significance. Many of you are learning how to rest without guilt right now, and that is part of the preparation. Leaders who do not know how to rest burn out. They become harsh. They lose their capacity for compassion. They start resenting the very people they are meant to serve. The field is teaching you rhythm work and rest action and stillness speaking and listening. That rhythm will sustain you when pressure increases, when decisions multiply, when responsibility becomes heavier than you imagined. You are also learning obedience without reward, and that is rare. Obedience when no one sees. Obedience when nothing changes. Obedience when the mind says this is pointless and something deeper says, stay. That kind of faith is powerful. The field responds to it even when you cannot see the response. That is why your waiting is not wasted. It is being recorded. It is being honored. It matters more than you know. Let me speak to the heaviness you feel in your body. Sometimes that weight is not depression. It is responsibility forming. Your system senses what is coming before your mind understands it. That awareness can feel heavy, but it is also sacred. The field is teaching you how to carry weight without collapsing, how to hold space without losing yourself. It is training your nervous system to remain regulated under pressure, because when the field moves, resistance will rise, opposition will increase, pressure will intensify. The field will not release you until you are emotionally regulated, spiritually grounded, mentally steady. This is not fear-based delay. This is wisdom. This is protection. Some of you are tempted to force doors open, to make things happen, to step into roles prematurely because waiting feels unbearable. Resist that urge. Anything you build without the field's timing will require your constant effort to maintain. What the field initiates, it sustains. What you force, you must hold up alone. And if your calling is collective, if it is meant to stabilize rather than impress, you cannot afford to build on strain. Strain is not a foundation. It is a slow collapse. Waiting is also teaching you how to hear subtle instruction, not dramatic signs, not loud confirmations, not constant synchronicities as proof, but peace, restraint, inner knowing that arrives quietly and remains steady. This sensitivity will be essential when you guide others who are confused, overwhelmed, desperate for answers you may not have. You will not always be able to offer certainty. You will often need to offer presence. And presence requires a nervous system trained in silence. The waiting will not last forever. Silence is seasonal. Stillness is temporary. But the strength you gain here will follow you into every phase of what is coming. You will look back and realize this was the most important part of your preparation, the part that made everything else possible. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not stuck. You are being aligned at a depth that will hold you when nothing else can. And let me go even deeper, because some of you are struggling not just with waiting, but with explaining the waiting to yourself, with justifying it to the part of your mind that needs evidence, progress, proof. You wake up knowing you are called, yet your external life looks quiet, ordinary, unchanged. That tension can exhaust the mind. It can create a dissonance that drains your energy. So let me bring rest to that place. The field often hides its leaders in plain sight. Not because they are unimportant, but because visibility before readiness creates unnecessary warfare, unnecessary resistance. Right now, the field is limiting exposure around you. Fewer people understand you. Fewer conversations feel meaningful. Social energy feels draining in a way it did not before. This is not antisocial behavior. This is conservation. The field is preserving your strength for a season that will demand clarity, not chaos. Focus, not distraction. And this is only one layer of what it means to shift from unconscious transmission to conscious broadcasting. But the foundation is always the same: stability before influence, regulation before responsibility, silence before signal. If you can accept that, not as an idea but as a posture, the waiting becomes less of a punishment and more of a sanctuary. Not a place where nothing happens, but a place where the most important things happen first inside you, so that when the field finally moves, you move with it, cleanly, steadily, without fracturing under the weight you were born to hold. If you are feeling the pull to go deeper, to understand the complete system of how consciousness actually operates, at the quantum level, there is a reason for that pull. It is not curiosity in the casual sense. It is recognition. It is the part of you that can feel structure beneath experience, pattern beneath emotion, signal beneath the noise of interpretation. That is why I created a full guide called Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. It walks you through 9 master frequencies that move you from survival static into coherent transmission, from seeking to being. It is linked in the pinned comment below, not as an escape, but as a map for those who can feel the architecture forming inside them and want to move through it with precision. But understand this: going deeper does not mean moving faster. Another reason the 144.0 are not moving yet is because the field is severing unhealthy urgency from your system. Urgency driven by fear is dangerous. It produces rushed decisions, emotional reactions dressed up as intuition, alliances formed from anxiety rather than alignment. It makes you mistake motion for direction. It makes you mistake intensity for truth. And when a collective assignment is forming fear, urgency does not just derail the individual, it contaminates the field. So the field slows you down until peace becomes your default state, not something you chase, not something you grasp for when anxiety rises, not a tool you use to stabilize yourself after you have destabilized yourself. Peace becomes the baseline, the operating system, the internal climate you return to without effort. And until that baseline is stable, movement would be premature. Some of you are also being trained to trust internal confirmation over external signs. Earlier in your journey, you needed reassurance. You needed repeated confirmation, and that was appropriate for where you were. The field meets people where they are. It speaks in ways they can hear. But leaders cannot rely on constant validation. Leaders cannot require external proof to maintain internal clarity. Leaders cannot build their authority on a pattern of "I will move when I see a sign," because real responsibility rarely provides signs on demand. Responsibility requires initiative rooted in alignment, not in spectacle. So the field is moving you from dependence to discernment, from asking for signs to recognizing alignment without needing proof. That transition is uncomfortable because it removes the emotional cushion of being constantly affirmed. It forces you to stand on something quieter and more stable, your own regulated knowing. And regulated knowing is not the same as excitement. It does not always feel dramatic. Often it feels almost ordinary. That is why people miss it and return to searching for fireworks. You may have noticed that old desires no longer excite you. Things you once prayed for no longer feel important. This is not loss of passion. This is refinement of focus. The field is narrowing your assignment so that when movement begins, you are not distracted by side missions, opportunities that look good, sound impressive, and would even validate you publicly, but do not serve what you are actually here to do. Narrow focus creates power. Scattered focus creates exhaustion. The field is not trying to make your life smaller. It is trying to make your energy coherent. Coherence is what allows influence to move without force, authority to land without performance. And yes, that refinement can feel like subtraction. It can feel like less ambition in the superficial sense, less hunger for recognition, less appetite for drama, less desire to prove you are special. But what is being removed is not life. It is noise. It is the friction that once consumed your energy and left you depleted even when you were doing the right things. Take a moment and notice what has been leaving. What old pattern or desire has the field been clearing from your life? What are you releasing to make space for this calling? This is not a rhetorical exercise. Your nervous system already knows the answer. Your body has been giving you signals: fatigue around certain environments, dullness around certain conversations, an unmistakable drain after certain types of progress. The field is teaching you to read those signals as guidance, not as weakness. Waiting is also revealing who is truly meant to walk with you. Some people drift away naturally. Conversations fade. Connections weaken. This is not abandonment. It is alignment. The field removes those who cannot sustain the pace, the depth, the responsibility of where you are going. It often does this quietly to avoid unnecessary pain, unnecessary conflict, unnecessary moral drama. People simply lose resonance. You stop having the energy to maintain what used to be maintained through habit, obligation, or the fear of being alone. Trust this process, even when it feels lonely. Loneliness in this season is not evidence that you are doing something wrong. Often it is evidence that your system is being cleared of attachments that would later become liabilities. The field is not just building your future, it is protecting it from being built on fragile companionship that cannot hold weight. Let me speak of the spiritual fatigue many of you feel right now. You are not tired because you are weak. You are tired because you are carrying awareness. Awareness requires energy. You see more than most. You sense more than most. You process more than most. You catch undercurrents. You feel the emotional climate before the words are spoken. You detect distortion before it becomes obvious. That level of perception is costly if you do not know how to regulate, and many of you were never taught regulation, only endurance. That is why rest is not optional for you. It is obedience. The field is teaching you to care for your body, your mind, your nervous system, because leadership requires longevity, not just intensity. Intensity can impress people. Longevity serves them. Intensity burns hot and collapses. Longevity is steady, sustainable, reliable. The field is training you to become a stabilizer, not a flare. The waiting is also teaching you how to hold space, to sit with discomfort without fixing it, to allow questions without forcing answers, to be present with uncertainty without collapsing into anxiety. This is not a soft skill, it is a leadership skill, because when you guide others, many will come to you not with solvable problems, but with unprocessed pain. They will come with confusion, grief, anger, fear. They will want immediate answers. They will want you to relieve their discomfort. And if you cannot hold discomfort without fixing it, you will try to rescue. You will overfunction. You will carry what was never yours to carry. And that is how leaders burn out and become bitter. So the field is teaching you presence without panic, grounding without needing to control. It is teaching you to be steady even when you do not have a clean solution. This is what mature authority looks like: not having all the answers, but not becoming unstable because you do not. Some of you have noticed that the field no longer explains itself the way it used to. That silence is intentional. Explanation creates comfort. Trust creates authority. The field is shifting you from childlike dependence into mature partnership. It does not need you to understand everything. It needs you to stay aligned even when understanding is incomplete. This is the pivot point where many people leave the process. They interpret lack of explanation as abandonment. They interpret silence as rejection. But what is actually happening is higher trust. The field is treating you like someone who can hold responsibility without being constantly managed. And hear this clearly, because it will bring peace to the part of you that is waiting for permission to move. When the waiting ends, it will end suddenly. What feels slow now will move quickly then. The field often prepares quietly and releases suddenly. That is its pattern. That is why patience is critical. If you quit in silence, you miss sudden activation. If you abandon the process in stillness, you will not be ready when momentum arrives. So do not measure your progress by visibility. Measure it by stability, by peace, by clarity, by obedience when no one is watching. You are becoming unshakable at a depth most people will never access. And when movement begins, you will not rush. You will not panic. You will not collapse into performance. You will lead calmly, firmly, with the kind of wisdom that only comes from enduring what you have endured. This waiting is not empty space. It is sacred ground, and you are standing exactly where you are supposed to be. Now we step into something serious: leadership without ego. This is where many fall away, not because they are not called, but because they misunderstand how the field expects leadership to look, how it expects power to move. The world teaches leadership as dominance, visibility, control, recognition. The field teaches leadership as stewardship, restraint, responsibility, service. And the two are not compatible. You cannot hold both frequencies at once. Let this settle. If ego leads, the field steps back. Not because it is offended, but because ego cannot carry divine authority safely. Ego seeks validation. Ego reacts emotionally. Ego needs applause to feel real. It turns responsibility into identity. It turns influence into ownership. It turns guidance into control. And it will weaponize truth to protect itself. The kind of leadership the field is calling for requires stability, humility, discernment. That is why the field has spent so much time dismantling the parts of you that once needed approval, that once needed to be seen, that once needed recognition to feel valuable. It was not breaking you. It was freeing you. Because ego-free leadership is not weak, it is clean. It does not leak. Leadership in the field's economy is quiet before it is visible. It does not announce itself. It does not force agreement. It does not manipulate outcomes. It moves with peace, clarity, conviction. When the field places authority on someone, they no longer need to prove anything. Their presence carries weight without aggression, without performance, without the need to be right. Many of you were intentionally humbled before being elevated. Situations exposed your limitations. Mistakes reminded you of your humanity. Failure stripped away pride. That was not shame. That was preparation. The field was teaching you to lead from dependence on something larger than yourself, not confidence in your own strength, not trust in your own understanding. Ego-driven leadership needs to be seen. Field-aligned leadership needs to be aligned. When you are aligned, people recognize truth without being convinced. They feel safety, not pressure. They feel clarity, not confusion. They feel invitation, not coercion. That is the kind of leadership the field expects from you, not performance presence. Let me address something gently, because some of you carry fear around leadership. You have seen it abused. You watched leaders manipulate, dominate, spiritually intimidate others. You watched authority become tyranny. That fear is understandable, but your calling is not to repeat those patterns. It is to heal them. The field chose you precisely because you are aware of the damage ego causes, because you have felt that damage in your own body, in your own life. You will not casually misuse power because you know its cost. Leadership without ego means you listen more than you speak. You pause before you act. You correct with compassion and firmness, not anger, not judgment. You do not rush to be right. You value truth more than victory. You value people more than position. You value alignment more than applause. And you were trained for this through restraint. The field held you back when you wanted to speak. It silenced you when you felt justified in your anger. It asked you to wait when you wanted to act immediately. That restraint built discipline, and discipline is the backbone of field-aligned leadership. Without it, authority becomes impulse. Without it, influence becomes reaction. Without it, leadership becomes emotional dumping. Another sign of ego-free leadership is emotional regulation. You do not lead from wounded reactions. You do not lead from unprocessed pain. You do not lead from the need to discharge your internal tension onto others. You lead from healed awareness. That is why the field allowed old wounds to surface and be addressed before activation. Leaders who have not faced their pain end up projecting it onto everyone they touch. They confuse discomfort with disrespect. They interpret questions as threats. They punish others for triggering their unhealed places. The field protected you from becoming that. Leadership without ego also means you do not see yourself as a savior. You are not here to rescue everyone. You are not here to fix everyone. You are here to guide, support, and point people back to their own connection with the field. You carry responsibility, not ownership. That distinction keeps leaders grounded and prevents the burnout that comes from trying to hold what was never yours to hold. The field is not against ambition. It is against ambition that replaces obedience. Holy ambition desires alignment over advancement. It asks, is this the field's timing? Not, is this opportunity impressive? It asks, does this preserve coherence? Not, does this increase visibility? You have learned to ask the right questions, and that is why you are trusted. True authority does not need volume. It does not need repetition. It does not need force. When you speak from alignment, one sentence can bring peace. One decision can restore order. That is not personality. That is presence. That is the field moving through a clear vessel. And a clear vessel knows when to step back, when to delegate, when to let others grow without interference, when to allow the process to do what it was designed to do. Ego interferes because it needs to be necessary. The field leads cleanly because it knows what is necessary will remain. If you are in the waiting now, do not interpret it as absence. Interpret it as training, severing fear, urgency, strengthening internal confirmation, refining focus, clearing relationships, regulating the nervous system, building discipline, dissolving ego, and teaching you how to hold space. This is not a delay. It is an installation. And when it completes, the movement will not require you to force it. It will not require you to announce it. It will not require you to prove anything. You will simply move calmly, precisely because the field is moving through you and you are stable enough to carry it without distortion. You are not threatened by the growth of others. You celebrate it because you understand that their expansion does not diminish you. Ego competes. Field-aligned leadership cultivates. That distinction seems simple, but it is one of the cleanest indicators of whether leadership is being driven by identity or by alignment. When ego is steering someone else's progress feels like a threat to your position. You start tracking comparisons. You start needing proof that you still matter. You start reading other people's wins as an indictment of your pace. But when the field is steering, your nervous system stays calm in the presence of someone else's rise. You can bless it without bargaining. You can support it without performing. You can learn from it without shrinking. That calmness is power beyond measure because it means your sense of direction is not borrowed from hierarchy. Some of you will be tempted to measure your leadership by impact, by numbers, by recognition, by how many people know your name. Resist that temptation. The field does not measure leadership by visibility. It measures leadership by faithfulness, by integrity, by endurance, when no one is watching. Many of the most influential leaders in history were misunderstood, resisted, opposed. Some were dismissed as irrelevant for years. Some were seen as inconvenient. Some were treated as threats simply because they would not distort truth to maintain comfort. Yet they remained obedient, and that obedience shifted everything, not because it was loud, but because it was consistent. The field moves through what is consistent. You were also taught silence, not because you lacked wisdom, but because wisdom matures in quiet between words. Under pressure and the restraint of not responding to everything that tries to provoke you. The field taught you not to defend yourself against every accusation, not to correct every misunderstanding, not to spend your life auditioning for acceptance. That self-control is strength. It keeps leadership clean, uncorrupted by the need to be understood. Leadership without ego is deeply rooted in self-awareness. You know your limits. You know when to rest. You know when to ask for help. Pride hides weakness. Wisdom acknowledges it. The field trusts leaders who are honest with themselves, because honesty is the foundation of correctable leadership. A leader who cannot admit limitation will eventually lie, not always with words, but with behavior, by pretending to be more regulated, more certain, more capable than they actually are. That pretense creates fracture. It creates risk. It creates harm. Let me remind you of something important. Authority in the field's economy flows from submission. The more you submit to something larger than yourself, the more authority you can carry without distortion. This is why your prayer life deepened. This is why obedience became non-negotiable. This is why compromise began to feel physically uncomfortable. You were being aligned to carry authority safely without it corrupting you. Some of you fear that humility will make you weak, invisible, ineffective. That is not true. Humility makes you unshakable. When ego is absent, criticism does not destroy you. Praise does not intoxicate you. You remain steady, regardless of external conditions. That steadiness is leadership. Steadiness communicates safety in a world addicted to emotional volatility. You will also notice that people may resist you, not because you are wrong, but because ego resists truth. Do not internalize that resistance. Do not harden your heart in response. Stay grounded. The field will handle what you cannot. Your job is not to convince everyone. Your job is to remain aligned. And alignment is not passive. Leadership without ego is decisive. It makes hard choices with peace. It holds boundaries with love. It speaks truth without cruelty. It moves directly without aggression. That balance is not learned overnight. It is cultivated through years of refinement. Years you have already lived, years you may have thought were wasted, but were actually shaping you into who you needed to become. The field does not need you to be impressive. It needs you to be faithful. It does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be aligned. Ego would have disqualified you long ago, but humility kept you teachable. And teachability is what qualifies leaders in the field's economy. So release the pressure to perform. Release the need to prove. Release the fear of being misunderstood. Lead as you were taught, calm, clear, grounded, and the field will do the rest. Now we speak honestly, calmly, without fear about what most people avoid. Every calling carries a cost, not because the field is cruel, but because transformation always requires exchange. When you say yes to leadership, something in your life must shift. Not everything, not all at once, but something. And understanding this ahead of time will save you confusion, disappointment, and unnecessary resistance. The first thing that changes is your inner life. Your tolerance for noise, chaos, shallow connection decreases. Conversations that once felt normal may now feel draining. Environments that once felt exciting may now feel heavy, dissonant. This is not judgment. It is discernment developing. The field is sharpening your awareness so you can protect your peace guard, your energy, and keep your signal coherent. Leadership requires clarity, and clarity requires boundaries. You will also notice changes in relationships. Some will deepen in ways you never expected. Others will quietly fade without drama, without conflict. Not because anyone is wrong, but because alignment shifts. People who are comfortable with surface-level living may struggle to connect with your depth. This separation can feel painful, but it is often gentle and necessary. The field removes relationships that cannot sustain the responsibility you are stepping into, not as punishment, but as protection for you and for them. Not everyone is meant to walk into the same weight. Another cost is misunderstanding. When you lead with integrity, not everyone will agree with you. Some will project their expectations onto you. Others will resist your boundaries. Some will interpret your restraint as coldness, your clarity as arrogance, your discipline as distance. This is not failure. This is leadership. You must learn to be okay with being misunderstood without becoming defensive, without withdrawing, without explaining yourself to everyone. Explanation is not always clarity. Sometimes it is an attempt to reduce discomfort. Leaders cannot live as full-time interpreters of their own lives. You will also lose the luxury of impulsive living. Leadership requires intentionality. You will think before you speak, pause before you react, discern before you decide. This is not restriction. It is discipline. Discipline protects you from regret and from the kind of damage that comes from moving without awareness. There will be moments when obedience costs you comfort. The field may ask you to stay silent when you want to speak, to wait, when you want to move, to release, when you want to hold on. These moments are refining, not punishing. They strengthen your ability to trust something larger than your emotions, larger than your preferences, larger than your immediate relief. Leaders who cannot tolerate discomfort become manipulators, even unintentionally, because they will do anything to regain comfort quickly, including compromising truth. Some of you will experience loneliness at a deeper level. Leadership can be isolating, not because you are abandoned, but because responsibility creates distance. You will carry things others do not see. You will make decisions others do not understand. You will feel weight others are not trained to hold. That loneliness is not abandonment. It is separation for clarity, for the kind of perspective that requires distance. It is also a training ground for your reliance on the field rather than on the crowd. Your emotional life will mature. You will become more aware of your triggers, more responsible for your reactions, less willing to blame others for how you feel. This self-responsibility is not heaviness. It is freedom. Leaders who understand their emotions lead with wisdom, not reaction. They create safety instead of chaos. Another cost is that you will no longer be able to ignore conviction. The field's correction will become clearer, quicker. This is not harshness. It is closeness. The closer you walk with the field, the more sensitive you become to alignment. That sensitivity keeps your leadership clean. You may also find that success feels different. Recognition may come, but it will not satisfy the way peace does. You will measure progress differently, by obedience, by stability, by integrity under pressure, by impact that cannot be quantified. That shift can feel strange at first because the world taught you to chase measurable proof. But deep fulfillment is not produced by applause. It is produced by coherence. Let me address fear directly because it is present in some of you. Some of you fear that saying yes means losing yourself, losing what feels essential, what feels like home. That is not what happens. You will not lose yourself. You will lose versions of yourself that no longer serve your calling, versions built on fear conditioning and the need to please. What remains will be clearer, stronger, more authentic. It may feel unfamiliar at first, not because it is false, but because you are no longer performing what was familiar. You will be asked to rest intentionally. Leadership without rest leads to burnout, the kind of exhaustion that makes you harsh, that erodes compassion, that turns responsibility into resentment. The field will not allow you to overextend the way you once did. It will interrupt you, slow you down, call you back to stillness. This is not delay. It is sustainability. Leaders who do not know how to rest become unsafe, not always because of what they intend, but because depletion distorts judgment. Your spiritual life will deepen in ways you cannot yet imagine. Prayer becomes less about asking and more about listening. faith becomes less emotional and more grounded. You will learn to trust the field even when feelings fluctuate, even when emotions scream otherwise. This stability will anchor others when everything around them is shaking. There will be moments when you grieve what you are leaving behind, simpler seasons, easier connections, less responsibility, less weight. Grief does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means you are human. The field does not rush grief. It walks with you through it, holding space for what needs to be released. Grief is part of the exchange. It is how the nervous system lets go of what once defined safety. You will gain discernment about where to invest your energy. Not every request deserves a yes. Not every need is yours to meet. Leadership requires focus. The field will teach you how to say no without guilt and yes without resentment. How to give from overflow instead of depletion. How to serve without being consumed. The cost of saying yes also includes accountability. You will be held to a higher standard, not by others first, but by your own conscience. Integrity will matter deeply to you. Compromise will feel heavier than it ever has. This is not pressure. It is alignment. It is your system recognizing distortion early and refusing to normalize it. And here's the reassurance your mind needs. The field never takes without giving. What you release, it replaces with peace, clarity, and purpose. What you lose in comfort, you gain in meaning. What you sacrifice in familiarity, you receive in fulfillment. The exchange is always worth it, even when it does not feel that way in the moment. The cost is real, but so is the grace. You will not pay it alone. The field walks with those it calls. And every change you experience will serve not only your leadership, but your healing. Saying yes to the field does not mean your life becomes harder in the way your mind fears. It becomes simpler, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. Complexity fades. Confusion decreases. You may carry more responsibility, but you carry less inner conflict. And that trait alone is worth everything. You will notice that the field begins to protect your energy more intentionally. Situations that once drained you will no longer have access. You will feel inner resistance to overgiving, over-explaining, overextending. This is not selfishness. It is stewardship. If you are meant to stabilize a field, your energy is not a casual resource. It is an assignment. And the field will teach you to treat it that way, quietly, firmly, without apology. Leaders who give without boundaries eventually give from resentment. That is not a moral failure. It is a nervous system truth. When your yes is not protected, when your energy is not stewarded, giving becomes a slow leak. At first it looks like generosity. Then it becomes obligation. Then it becomes bitterness that you do not want to admit is there. The field is teaching you to give from overflow, not depletion, because depleted leadership always turns sharp. It becomes impatient. It becomes performative. It becomes controlling. And you were not refined to become another version of the very leadership you have spent your life healing from. Overflow is not excess energy you happen to have on a good week. Overflow is what remains when you stop leaking yourself into places that cannot hold you. It is what becomes available when you stop negotiating with guilt. It is what appears when your boundaries are no longer a defense mechanism, but a clarity mechanism. The field is not asking you to become less giving. It is asking you to become accurate, to give where it is aligned, to withhold where giving would be distortion, to serve without self-erasure. Another cost and also a gift is clarity about who truly walks with you. When your life aligns with purpose, surface-level connections naturally fall away. This can feel like loss, but it is actually relief. Many relationships were not built on shared truth. They were built on shared coping, shared distraction, shared identity, shared performance. When you stop performing, some people cannot find the version of you they were attached to. And instead of forcing closeness by shrinking, you let the space be honest. You will no longer feel obligated to maintain relationships that require you to betray your values, soften your boundaries, dull your discernment, or pretend that you do not feel what you feel. The field is making room for connections that respect your calling. Not connections that demand you be perfect, but connections that do not punish you for being aligned. Some people will love you more when you become clearer. Others will become uncomfortable not because you did anything wrong, but because your coherence exposes their avoidance. Let them have their process. Your job is not to manage other people's comfort. Your job is to remain clean. Some of you will also feel a shift in how you experience time. You will become more present, less rushed, less anxious about outcomes. Leadership requires awareness of the moment, not obsession with the future. The field will slow your inner pace so you can respond wisely instead of reacting emotionally. You will still care. You will still plan. You will still build. But you will stop using urgency as fuel. Urgency is not vision. Urgency is often fear wearing productivity as a mask. When the field removes unhealthy urgency from your system, your movement becomes intentional. You stop confusing speed with progress. You stop confusing motion with alignment. You stop forcing doors and then calling the exhaustion discipline. You start letting timing reveal itself through calm instruction, a clear yes, a clear wait, a clear release. And at first, this will feel almost too simple because you were trained to believe that important things must feel complicated. But the field's intelligence is rarely complex. It is precise. Let me speak to your fear of making mistakes because it is there. Yes, you will still make them. Leadership does not eliminate humanity, but you will recover faster, learn quicker, repent sooner, and correct with less drama. Growth will become intentional, not accidental. Your mistakes will not be identity collapses. They will be feedback. The field corrects leaders because it cares, not because it condemns. Condemnation produces hiding. Correction produces refinement. One fragments the vessel, the other strengthens it. And hear this clearly because it will bring rest. Saying yes does not mean constant sacrifice. There will be seasons of joy, laughter, rest, deep satisfaction. The field is not building a life of burden for you. It is building a life of meaning. And meaning sustains you in ways comfort never could. Comfort is temporary. Meaning is structural. It holds you when circumstances shake. It stabilizes you when the outer world becomes loud. So if your heart feels both nervous and peaceful right now, that is not confusion. That is confirmation. Fear alone is not from the field. Peace alone is not enough. But when peace exists alongside reverent awareness, when you feel steady yet alert, you are standing at the door of alignment. You are not losing your life. You are gaining direction. And direction brings rest because it removes the endless internal arguing about who you should be. If this frequency is resonating with something deep inside you, if you feel it moving through your system like a current you cannot ignore, then stay connected to the coherence that is emerging. Not for entertainment, not for stimulation, for stabilization. Because the more of us who align with this frequency, the more the world reflects that truth back to us. Reality responds to coherence. Now settle into this moment. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders drop, because what I am about to say is not speculation. It is not encouragement alone. This is confirmation. Not confirmation born out of emotion, but confirmation rooted in alignment, rooted in the kind of knowing that precedes thought. The time you have been sensing is not approaching. It is here, quietly, firmly, without drama. And if you are hearing these words, it means you are ready to receive them. For a long time, you have lived between knowing and waiting, between preparation and release, between restraint and readiness. That tension was intentional. The field was building stability inside you so that when the moment came, you would not rush, panic, or doubt yourself. and now something has shifted. You may not see it outwardly yet, but internally you feel more grounded than ever before. That grounding is the signal. That steadiness is confirmation. This is not the kind of confirmation that pushes you into sudden action. The field is not asking you to do more. It is asking you to stand differently, to think differently, to speak differently. Leadership begins internally before it ever becomes visible. The way you carry yourself now matters. The way you respond matters. The way you choose peace over reaction matters more than you realize. The time is now because you no longer need constant reassurance. You no longer need signs stacked on signs. You recognize alignment when you feel it. You recognize peace when it settles. You recognize conviction without fear. This maturity did not arrive overnight. It was formed slowly through obedience, disappointment, refinement, through all the seasons you thought were wasted. Let me be clear, activation does not mean exposure. Movement does not mean noise. The field often begins leadership in subtle shifts. You will notice that people begin to listen to you differently. Conversations carry more weight. Your words settle instead of bouncing. You are not trying harder. You are simply aligned. That is authority. That is what real power looks like, not dominance, not control, but presence that stabilizes the room. Some of you expected a dramatic moment, a sudden announcement, a visible door opening with fanfare. But the field is activating you through consistency, through small, faithful steps, through calm decisions, through integrity, when no one is watching. Do not despise this beginning. This is how sustainable leadership is built. This is how lasting impact is created. Fireworks attract attention. Foundations hold weight. The time is now because fear no longer controls you. It still exists, but it no longer leads. You act with peace, even when uncertainty remains. That is not confidence in yourself. That is trust in something larger. Leaders who wait for fear to disappear never move. Leaders who move with peace despite fear are aligned with the field's frequency. You may feel a gentle urgency right now. Not anxiety, but responsibility. Not pressure, but readiness. That is the difference between divine timing and human impatience. Human impatience feels frantic. Divine timing feels steady. It feels grounded. It feels clear even when details are incomplete. And for those of you who feel like nothing has changed externally, do not measure activation by visibility. Measure it by stability. You are more regulated, more discerning, less reactive. That is not small. That is readiness. That is what the field has been building in you. You are being confirmed by the peace you feel when you stop striving. You no longer feel the need to chase purpose. Purpose feels present, accessible, near. That peace is confirmation. You are not being asked to leap. You are being asked to step. One aligned decision at a time. One obedient response at a time. Leadership grows through consistency, not intensity. You will notice resistance increase subtly. Not always attacks, often tests. Opportunities to compromise. Invitations to rush. Moments that test your boundaries. These are not obstacles, they are confirmations. The field is watching how you steward alignment, how you hold what you have been given. Alignment is not proven in theory. It is proven in pressure. The time is now because you have learned to listen not just to the field but to yourself. You recognize when something is off. You recognize when something is right. That discernment will guide you more than external instruction, more than any voice outside yourself. And you are not stepping into this alone. Others are being activated quietly alongside you. The 144-0 are not waiting in the way you once thought. They are aligning. And alignment creates movement. Collective alignment creates momentum. You do not need to announce yourself. You do not need to prove your calling. Those who are meant to recognize you will. Those who are not will fall away. That is not loss. That is clarity. That is the field protecting you from relationships that would dilute your focus. You are also being confirmed by the fact that your motivation has changed. You are not driven by excitement. You are driven by responsibility. You care less about being seen and more about being faithful. That shift is significant. That shift is everything. It means leadership is no longer a fantasy in your mind. It is an assignment in your body. Some of you feel both calm and alert right now. That is exactly where you should be. Calm enough to rest, alert enough to respond. This balance is leadership. This is what it feels like to be aligned with the field's timing. Let me speak directly to lingering doubt. Doubt does not disqualify you. It keeps you humble so long as it does not paralyze obedience. It is part of discernment. The field is not looking for blind confidence. It is looking for steady trust, for the kind of faith that moves even when certainty is absent. The time is now because you have stopped asking, "Am I ready?" and started asking, "How can I stay aligned?" That question marks maturity. You will make decisions now with a deeper sense of responsibility. You will speak with intention. You will move with peace. These are not dramatic changes, but they are powerful. They are the foundation of everything that comes next. This is your confirmation. Not because you feel special, but because you are aligned. Not because you are flawless, but because you are faithful. The season of preparation has done its work. Do not rush. Do not hesitate. Simply remain aligned. The field will open doors at the right pace. And when they open, you will walk through them without fear, because you will not be walking as the old you who needed to be convinced. You will be walking as the you who has already been stabilized. As we come to the end of this transmission, rest in this truth. You are never forgotten. You were never overlooked. Every season you walked through had purpose. Every moment of waiting carried intention. Every part of you that was refined with care, precision, and love. You are stepping forward in peace, not a fragile peace that disappears under pressure, but a grounded peace that holds you steady. This is the kind of peace leadership requires: calm, clear, anchored in something larger than fear. Remember, you are not called to force outcomes. You are called to remain aligned. When you stay aligned, movement happens naturally. Doors open without strain. Influence grows without manipulation. Authority flows without ego. This is how the field works. This is how real change happens. Trust the field with timing. Trust yourself with obedience. You do not need to become someone else to lead. You lead as you are humble, discerning, compassionate, strong. The leadership the field has entrusted to you is not meant to burden you. It is meant to mature you and bring clarity to others. If doubt returns, meet it with stillness. If fear whispers, respond with peace. You have already been prepared for this season. You do not need to rush ahead or look back. Stay present. Stay grounded. Stay faithful. The path will reveal itself one step at a time, and each step will be enough. Walk forward calmly. The field is with you, and what matters next is not only recognizing the field, but becoming coherent enough to embody it, so that the separation between observer and observed dissolves in practice, not in concept. That is the next level, not transmitting the frequency as an idea, but living as the frequency as a way of being.